you've got to report it to the SEC within 2.
Senator Kennedy.
Okay, I'll try to be as quick as I can. Mr. Chairman, welcome. Thanks for being here. You're both looking well. Chairman Genzo, do you remember, I know you do, back in October of 2020, Ant Group, a subsidiary of Alibaba, announced an IPO. And everybody was all a titter, going to invest in this extraordinary IPO because Alibaba is such a successful company. And the CEO of Alibaba got crossways with President Xi. And unsurprisingly, President Xi won. And he canceled the IPO, he meaning President Xi, for Ant Group, the subsidiary of Alibaba. And of course, after the announcement of the cancellation was made, Alibaba stock dropped about 8%. You remember that? I did some checking, and 2 days before the announcement that the IPO was canceled, a bunch of insiders at Alibaba dumped about $150 million worth of Alibaba stock, therefore avoiding an 8% loss, which other investors who didn't know about the IPO cancellation had to swallow. Insider trading. And I said, how can this be? Well, our law provides, I'm not blaming it on you, this is Congress's fault. Our law says that if you are the CEO of an American company and you sell your stock, you've got to report it to the SEC within 2 days of the sale, and you've got to report it electronically. You can't use snail mail. And you post it there in front of God and country on your internet, on your website. But a foreign executive doesn't have to do this. The foreign executive, he has weeks to inform you that he's executed an insider trail, and he can then send it to you by snail mail. And it's not even posted on the website. So Senator Van Hollen and I have a bill to basically say the foreign investors and the foreign executives have to follow the same rules as the American executives. I mean, insider trading is insider trading. Will you support that? We talked to my Democratic colleagues.
I think that you're addressing something, Senator Van Hollen, and you are addressing a gap in our current regime. We have about 1,000 of these foreign private issuers, and you're right that they don't have to currently file within 2 days electronically their trades, and I think that would help close a gap. There's another gap that's actually a 25-year-old rule, and I've asked staff to look at, called Regulation Fair Disclosure, or FD, when it was under Chair Levitt some years ago that he put it in place. A simple concept. If you share material, non-public information to analysts or Wall Street or to the press, you've got to put it out to everybody. And it's helped protect the public. Fair disclosure. But guess what? There's an exemption there for foreign private issuers as well. So I've asked staff to take a close look. We'd have to go through notice and comment rulemaking to change that.
Good idea. Well, we're going to try to move our bill by UC, unanimous consent. I can't imagine anybody will object, but I've seen it happen before. So any help you can give us. Last weekend, I know I need to get a life, but I sat down and read Judge Englehart's opinion in the, I forget the name of the case, National Association of Private Funds Managers v. SEC. It's the private funds rule case. And I thought the opinion was, regardless of what you think about the result, I thought it was well-reasoned, well-written, far-reaching. And I wanted to get your thought, and I know the Fifth Circuit en banc can change it, and the Supreme Court might review it, but I wanted to get your thoughts about the consequences of the holding in that case, holdings, on your other rulemaking procedures?
I'm glad that you read the case, and of course it's in the Fifth Circuit, it's in New Orleans. So.
Yeah.
But we're still reviewing and thinking about our next steps. But I think that what it said, and Senator Haggerty and I were talking about it, is this new provision 14 years ago in Dodd-Frank, Section 913 of that.
Which is part of the Advisors Act.
Part of the Advisors Act, you might remember it's 211H of the Advisors Act, that talks about new authorities about investors. The court read that to be just about retail investors. And so we're looking at that, but if you're asking me, that means that narrows that authority. Of course, we do everything within the law and how courts interpret it, but we're just still thinking about the next steps. But it would narrow that authority to, I think as they read it, I'm using a colloquial word, retail investors.
One of the things, Mr. Chairman, that got my attention, and you can debate whether it's part of the holding or not, but the court seemed to seize on the fact that in terms of your fraud rule, based on the SEC's experience, out of the thousands and thousands of these private funds, you've only found 0.5%, not 5%, 0.5% instances of fraud, but yet the requirement to comply with the private funds rule was going to cause the private funds industry over $5 billion a year. Obviously, it was a cost-benefit analysis. That made sense to me. What do you think?
Well, with all respect to any court and so forth, we put certain things in a filing and we listed, I don't remember, a couple dozen examples. They're exemplars. We in our enforcement, and what we do in enforcement is we have cases when it comes to our attention and we pursue that fraud and then we either settle or we litigate. And so we were giving some of those examples. But again, we're still looking at that case. We're looking at the opinion, trying to determine next steps. But I think that in any area in the law, if we have examples of fraud, that's to help protect the public. And it's not whether there's tens of thousands of them, but what in that case, a couple dozen real cases that we were able to point to.
But the question was being raised, and I'm going to shut it down, Chris. Cost benefit, okay? And the court was saying that there are only 0.5%, half of 1% instances of fraud based on SEC experience. But the SEC issued a rule that was going to cost everybody $5 billion a year, and does that make sense? And I think it was raising that issue.
Well, we address ourselves to cost benefit, I think, in a very serious way as to what problem we're trying to solve. In this case, what we were trying to solve is information for the limited partners investing in private funds, and behind those limited partners, of course, are pension funds, endowments, your state pension funds probably in your states. To have quarterly reports to them on the performance fees and arrangements with other investors. And this was not meant to be public information. It was just private information to those. I think that would promote greater competition and efficiency in that market. But again, the court had a different view on this important Section 913.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Senator Durbin and then Senator Bozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see you both. Most people know, but it bears repeating, that the CFTC in particular has a special connection to my state and city of Chicago. Mr. Gensler, having served in that capacity, you know that full well. And the SEC, of course, is a highly respected institution as well. Thank you for being here today. There's a difference between the way that your two agencies are funded, is there not?
As I understand it, but having had Russ's seat and having once had that special relationship with the Senator from Illinois, we're fully funded or budget neutral because of fees we can assess on transactions.
Chairman Benton.
We do not have a user fee. We're appropriated on an annual basis by Congress.
And as I understand it, in the President's request, $2.6 billion for the SEC, $399 million for the CFTC. Is that about right?
Yes.
Yes.
I raise that point as my initial observation because I want to join the chorus in asking about the future of crypto. This is an amazing phenomenon. 88% of the American people have heard about it. 1 in 5 have invested in it. 75% say they are not confident in the safety and reliability of crypto. 45% report that their investments have performed worse than they had expected. And most do not realize that there is no insurance involved in this, no federal guarantee. You're on your own when you go into crypto, correct?
Yes.
Yes, it's a field that's rife with abuse and fraud, and at least in the those tokens that are crypto securities are not properly giving people the disclosure that you'd get for any other offering.
You've been quoted, Mr. Gensler, as saying it is rife with fraud, scams, and abuse. I think you just about repeated that.
Yes, and some of the leaders 2 years ago in this whole field are either in jail, about to go to jail, or awaiting extradition. I mean, tens of billions of dollars have been put at risk.
Despite the House bill, Chairman Benham, we have those who worry that the CFTC is biting off a hell of a lot more than it can chew when it says they want to play in crypto and regulate the industry, at least some aspects of it. What in the world makes you think that you can get into this fast-moving, capacious world and be effective as a regulator?
Senator, using the word play, I think I would sort of disagree with that respectfully. This is our responsibility. This is my responsibility as chair to make observations about commodity markets and to relay what I observe to all of you. And currently, there is a gap in regulation over non-security commodity tokens. Our enforcement record at the CFTC, I think, demonstrates our success and our expertise. Over the past 10 years, we brought 135 crypto cases. We've brought in billions of dollars. And we've successfully policed a market where we don't have direct authority or jurisdiction, which ultimately leads to all of this fraud and rampant abuse in markets, and ultimately public mistrust, lack of confidence, and loss of funds. So we are one of 2 market regulators in the U.S. financial system. We are adequately equipped to oversee the markets that we traditionally oversee.
Yep. What makes you think you're adequately equipped to deal with this market?
Finishing that statement, we are adequately equipped to oversee the markets we are mandated to oversee. But if we were to be given authority over crypto markets, I would certainly expect there to be an increase in a budget.
Let me ask you, Chairman Gensler, do you have, having lived the life of chairman of the CFTC, do you think that agency is capable of handling the responsibilities we're talking about?
I'm going to be conditional. I think it depends on what they're given. I think that the Congress's wisdom was to have an agency to oversee disclosure-based markets where issuers are asking the public to buy and sell their securities and are investing in those. And most of the crypto market is that. There's 15 to 20,000 of these tokens, and without prejudging any one of them, most investors expecting to benefit from the efforts of others. That disclosure-based regime has not been set up at the CFTC. The CFTC I love. It's a great agency, but it was set up to do the derivatives. There's not disclosure, for instance, mandated, required, nor has Congress suggested on corn, wheat, oil, or interest rates. So it's this disclosure-based regime that we have at the SEC, and I would say that largely the crypto field has been thumbing its nose at it and been non-compliant.
And the differences are not a significant difference when it comes to the investigative resources and mission of the SEC as opposed to the CFTC?
I think having had the honor to chair both, I mean, they're both great agencies. We do have about, I don't know, maybe 9 times the staff or so, roughly. So we've got a greater remit. And also, our standards and rules around exchanges and protecting the public that there's not as many conflicts. You know, the New York Stock Exchange can't trade against their customers and run a hedge fund on the side, as sometimes happens in this crypto field, for instance. And so the New York Stock Exchange can't actually also run a hedge fund and trade against their customers or make markets ahead of their customers. But in the crypto field, that's what's happening on a lot of exchanges. That they're commingling all these functions. They're taking the customer's assets, so they're taking custody. They're often then using those assets and trading against them. I mean, it was very public what happened in FTX, but that is not unique. It's happened in multiple places, that there's this commingling. The intermediaries are really presenting themselves as exchanges, but they're doing an awful lot of other things to put their interest ahead of their customers.
So they're telling their customers, go long. They're telling their internal investors, go short.
They may be, depending upon the company, depending upon the day. They may also be buying into the tokens and then listing them. And when you list a token, you get a pop in the value of the token. And so that's good for the intermediary in the middle as well.
Seems it's like a chia pet. It looks like a good idea for a gift until you buy it.
It's really, this is a field that's not serving the public well right now.
Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Thank you, Senator Durbin. Senator Bozeman.
Well, thank you. That's hard to follow. We appreciate you all being here very much. I'd like to start with the cat. And my understanding is, you know, prior to the consolidated audit trail, if Aunt Sue bought a stock, that information remained with her and her broker. Now it's going to you, the SEC, and FINRA. That seems to be very much Big Brother. My main concern is I don't think the SEC has the authority to set up the cat, but I'm also concerned that SEC and FINRA don't have the ability to secure it. When I was working with you, when you were at CFTC, we had the OPM breach, we had the SEC breach, the list goes on. And again, I don't see any special ability of yours to secure that information, nor is the need for that information to be brought to a central depository unless you've got a problem. And then, you know, you can subpoena it or do whatever you want to do. On top of that, FINRA has no accountability, no oversight, which is a huge problem given their pay scale and remote work schedule. So we're going to be writing a letter about that and see if we can dig into some of those things. I was going to ask the question about how many people work, how many people have access, but you know, you mentioned 100, 200, you don't even know, you know, how many people have access to the data that's coming in. So maybe you can tell us how often they're using the CAT data and how many enforcement cases have been used as a result of the CAT data.
I thank you for the question and reminding me about when we worked together when I was in that chair.
Right.
But in 2010, when I was in that chair, there was something called the flash crash. And one of the things that happened as a result is that CFTC, within 24 to 48 hours, understood all the movements in the futures, or at least had the data. We had to analyze it. Good staff takes time to. I was struck when I was in Russ's job at the Chair Benham's job at the time. The SEC did not have that ability to have the data to assess what happened. It took months of special calls and getting the data. So that's what Chair Shapiro tried to address back then, and wrote a rule, notice and comment rulemaking, long ago. I came in 2021, and the consolidated audit trail had already been stood up. There's a national market system plan on that. In terms of your specific question, it's a narrow group, and I did say to Senator Hagerty, we can come back to the specifics. I just didn't want to misstate if it's 122 or 142. And there's a lot of limitation on people using the data and tapping into the data, even at the SEC. In enforcement, it's not everybody in enforcement, it's not everybody in our trading and markets, it's very limited. But the reason that it's important information is we have a market system that has, and I might be off, like 15 to 20 different exchanges. I mean, we all know the big ones like New York Stock Exchange and NASDAQ and Chicago Board, but there's multiple exchanges and trades can go across these different venues. And so it's tying it together, thus called the consolidated audit trail, something that Chair Benham had, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, and could get that data more readily, as I remember it 14 years ago. So that's where it helps us. In terms of the number of enforcement matters, from time to time, we do include that in a public release. I mean, there's some notable ones in insider trading where the data itself helped us understand what was happening in the markets.
How many? How many?
I want to be careful because I have to think about how many have we publicly disclosed in the enforcement matter that some of the information came from CAT, which is a smaller number than actually has been used. So I think I just have to be careful and come back to you, but it is an important tool that's used by our market oversight, and also, if I might say, the stock exchanges, and there's 8 different stock exchange groups that use it for their market surveillance.
Well, we could eliminate a lot of problems if we knew what everybody was doing all the time. But we have protections, in place, or should have protections in place, as to prevent, again, this 100, 200 people having the ability to pour through data. And then the other concern is the security. And I think that's a huge issue. And I don't think, I simply don't think you have the ability to do that. Chair Benham, interest rate volatility is up, and U.S. firms want to hedge their interest rate risk through derivatives clearinghouses. I know you agree that incentivizing clearing is a good thing, but U.S. customers are prohibited from clearing rates in several foreign jurisdictions, including Japan and elsewhere. The problem is that foreign customers aren't prohibited, so U.S. customers are at a disadvantage. Will you commit to allowing U.S. customers the ability to hedge their global interest rate risk to ensure a level playing field?
Thanks, Senator. We have a very clear regulatory structure around access to U.S. customers. This is all driven around customer protections and bankruptcy protections. And as we at the agency evaluate non-U.S. clearinghouses who have the ability to register with the CFTC fully or fall under an exempt clearinghouse model, which was created in Dodd-Frank 14 years ago, we have to respect those boundaries of bankruptcy protections and customer protections, which I think you and your colleagues can agree are the sort of pinnacle of what we do and what we care about. So as it relates to U.S. customers and access to foreign markets, I certainly commit to working with other jurisdictions, other institutions who want to register with us fully or fall within an exempt classification. But I feel very strongly that whatever we do with respect to non-U.S. entities who want access to U.S. markets, we have to ensure that the same protections that apply for U.S. entities, whether it's a U.S. clearinghouse or U.S. broker, an FCM, or U.S. exchange, apply to those non-U.S. entities. And there are certain jurisdictions that don't necessarily have parallel bankruptcy law or parallel regulations that would either allow them to register with us fully or provide those bankruptcy protections, which are paramount to U.S. derivatives laws.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.